I never imagined my wedding day would end with champagne dripping down my white dress and 200 guests staring in shocked silence. Yet there I stood, frozen in place, as my sister Allison lowered her now empty glass and smirked. "Here's to the family fraud in white," she had just announced loud enough for everyone to hear. The beautiful reception hall fell completely silent. I could feel my new husband Jack tense beside me, ready to intervene. Before either of us could react, my mother rushed forward, grabbing Allison's arm. "She didn't mean it," Mom said quickly, forcing a laugh while pulling my sister away. But the damage was done. As champagne soaked through silk and lace, I knew this night would end very differently than I had planned. That morning had been absolute perfection. I woke up in the bridal suite of the Lakeside Hotel, feeling like the luckiest woman alive. Sunlight streamed through gauzy curtains, casting a golden glow across the room as my bridesmaids bustled around laughing and helping each other with hair and makeup. Everyone except Allison, who was nowhere to be seen. "Genevieve, you look absolutely stunning," my best friend Tara said carefully, adjusting my veil. "Jack is going to lose his mind when he sees you." Jack. Even thinking about him brought a smile to my face. We'd met 3 years ago at a charity fundraiser where we were both volunteers. He was brilliant, kind, and worked as an engineering project manager. When he proposed last year at the same fundraiser, I couldn't say yes fast enough. We complemented each other perfectly, his quiet steadiness balancing my more outgoing personality. "Has anyone heard from Allison?" I asked, checking my phone for the 5th time that hour. She was supposed to be here an hour ago for hair and makeup. My mother appeared in the doorway, already dressed in her navy blue mother of the bride outfit. "She just called. Traffic was bad, but she'll be here soon." The tight smile on Mom's face told me there was more to the story, but I didn't want anything ruining this day. I had asked Allison to be my maid of honor, despite our complicated relationship. Growing up, we'd been more like distant relatives than sisters, with a 3-year age gap that sometimes felt like 30. Still, she was my only sister, and I desperately wanted to believe we could be close. The ceremony was set for 2 o'clock, and by 1:45, I was starting to panic that my own maid of honor wouldn't show. Just as the wedding coordinator was suggesting we start without her, Allison rushed in, already wearing her bridesmaid dress, but with her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, rather than the updo we'd planned. "Sorry," she muttered, not sounding sorry at all. "Can we just get this over with?" Mom shot her a warning look while Dad cleared his throat uncomfortably. "It's fine," I said, forcing a smile. "You're here now, that's what matters." The ceremony itself was everything I dreamed of. Walking down the aisle on my father's arm, seeing Jack's face light up as our eyes met, exchanging vows that we'd written ourselves. All of it felt magical. I barely noticed Allison's sour expression as she stood beside me, shifting impatiently throughout the ceremony. After we were pronounced husband and wife, we headed to the reception in the grand ballroom. The space looked incredible, with twinkling lights draped from ceiling to floor, white roses, and lilies adorning every table, and a dance floor that begged to be used. Jack and I shared our first dance, and for those few minutes, everything was perfect. Then came the toasts. Jack's best friend Daniel went first, sharing heartfelt stories about our relationship that had everyone alternating between laughter and happy tears. Next came Allison. As maid of honor, she was expected to say a few words, though she'd been oddly silent about her plans when I'd asked earlier. I should have known something was wrong when she grabbed a full glass of champagne instead of the half-filled one prepared for toasts. She tapped on her glass, silencing the room, and started speaking. "Well, I guess it's my turn," she began, her voice slightly slurred. Had she been drinking already? "What can I say about my sister Genevieve?" She paused, looking around the room with an expression I couldn't quite read. Jack squeezed my hand reassuringly under the table. "Genevieve has always been surprising," she continued. "Always pushing, always trying to prove herself. Always trying to be something she's not." An uncomfortable murmur went through the guests. My father half rose from his seat, but my mother placed a hand on his arm, shaking her head slightly. Allison started walking toward our table, champagne glass in hand. You all think you know her. Sweet, hard-working Genevieve. But I know the truth. She was standing directly in front of me now. I could smell alcohol on her breath. So here's to my sister, she said, raising her glass higher. Here's to the family fraud in white. Then she tossed her drink directly at me. Champagne splashed across my dress, my face, even into my carefully styled hair. Gasps echoed throughout the ballroom. Jack jumped up, napkin in hand, while I sat there utterly stunned. My mother rushed forward, grabbing Allison's arm and pulling her back. She didn't mean it, she said loudly, her smile strained and panic in her eyes. Too much champagne, I'm afraid. Come on, honey, let's get some air. As Mom dragged Allison away, I heard a woman at the next table whisper to her companion. I always knew there was something off about that family. Didn't Karen tell us? Allison's been saying Genevieve isn't really college material, that she doesn't deserve her success. The words hit me like a physical blow. So that's what this was about. All these years and Allison was still spreading the same old lies about me. Jack helped me to my feet, dabbing at my dress with his napkin. Are you okay? Do you want to leave? I looked around at our guests. Jack's family looking confused and concerned. My extended family embarrassed our friends, unsure what to do. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. I refused to let Allison ruin it completely. No, I said, straightening my shoulders. This is our wedding. I'm not going anywhere. But as the reception continued with guests trying too hard to pretend nothing had happened, I knew something had fundamentally changed. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to just smile and let it go. To understand why my sister's words cut so deeply, you need to know our history. Growing up in our middle-class home in Woodbury, Minnesota, Allison and I couldn't have been more different. From the beginning, Allison was labeled the smart one. She walked early, talked early, and seemed to grasp concepts without effort. By contrast, I struggled. Reading didn't come naturally to me, and math was a constant battle. Our parents, particularly Mom, made no secret of their pride in Allison's natural abilities. Allison got another A+ on her science test. Mom would announce at dinner while my C+ papers were met with tight smiles and suggestions to try harder next time. Our childhood home was filled with trophies and certificates, almost all bearing Allison's name. She was the golden child, the one destined for greatness while I was, well, the other daughter. When I was 14 and Allison 17, I overheard a conversation between my parents that changed everything. I'm worried about Genevieve, my mother said. College is only a few years away, and with her grades. She's trying her best, Dad responded, though his tone lacked conviction. Trying isn't enough, Robert. Not everyone is cut out for higher education. Maybe we should start looking at alternatives. Trade schools, perhaps. Something inside me snapped that day. I didn't want alternatives. I wanted the same opportunities as my sister. So I started working harder than I'd ever worked before. I stayed up late studying, got extra help from teachers, and sacrificed my social life for academics. Slowly, painfully, my grades began to improve. By junior year of high school, I was making honor roll. By senior year, I was taking advanced placement classes. Studying didn't come easily to me like it did for Allison, but I developed systems and strategies that worked. When college application time came around, I applied to several schools, including the prestigious University of Michigan. Meanwhile, Allison, who had coasted through high school on natural talent, had started slipping. She'd discovered parties and boys, and suddenly schoolwork seemed less important. Her grades dropped, though my parents always found excuses. She's just bored with the material, or the teachers don't challenge her enough. The day my acceptance letter from Michigan came was one of the proudest moments of my life. I ran into the house letter, clutched in my hand, eager to share the news. Mom and Dad were in the kitchen. I got in. I got accepted to Michigan, I announced, breathless with excitement. Dad looked up from his newspaper, genuine surprise on his face. Michigan. That's wonderful, Genevieve. Mom's reaction was more measured. Well, that's nice, dear, but it's very expensive. We'll need to talk about whether it makes financial sense. That conversation never happened for Allison when she got accepted to colleges. For her, it was always assumed they would find a way to make it work. A few weeks later, when Allison barely scraped an acceptance to Minnesota State, there was no talk of financial sense. Instead, my parents immediately started discussing dorm options and campus visits. It was around this time that they set up the shared bank account. For both your educations, Dad explained, we'll deposit money each month, and you can withdraw what you need for tuition and books. The account had both our names on it, though. Mom would oversee it until we were responsible enough to manage it ourselves. The summer before college, I worked 2 jobs to save additional money, knowing Michigan would be more expensive than Minnesota State. Allison spent the summer going to parties and shopping, assuring our parents she'd get a campus job eventually. I left for Michigan with a mixture of pride and trepidation. For once in my life, I had accomplished something Allison hadn't. I was attending a more prestigious school with a clearer path to success. But I also felt guilty for feeling proud. Wasn't I supposed to be happy for my sister regardless of where we each ended up? Throughout college, I continued working part-time jobs while maintaining a high GPA. Meanwhile, Allison changed majors 3 times and was on academic probation more than once. Still, whenever I came home for holidays, the conversation inevitably centered around Allison's potential and how she just needed to find her passion. It wasn't until my 3rd year of college that I discovered the extent of the deception. I had borrowed Mom's phone to call Dad when they picked me up from the airport for Thanksgiving break. After making the call, I noticed a text notification pop up from Allison. Thanks for the extra cash. Don't tell the pretender. Curious and concerned, I did something I'm not proud of. I scrolled up through their message history. What I found shattered any illusions I still had about my place in the family. Jen is acting so proud of her 3.8 gigapascals. One message from my mother read, if only she knew how much easier Michigan grades compared to real schools. The pretender strikes again, Allison had replied. Can't wait to see her face when she realizes no one takes her degree seriously. Message after message, they mocked my achievements, called me the pretender, and acted as if my academic success was some sort of fluke or fraud. I put the phone down feeling physically ill. All these years of working twice as hard of proving myself, and they still saw me as the family disappointment. Worse, they actively undermined me behind my back. I didn't confront them then. Instead, I plastered on a smile and got through the holiday. But something fundamental shifted inside me. I stopped seeking their approval. I stopped sharing my accomplishments. I built a life for myself at Michigan, with friends who valued me, and professors who recognized my abilities. When I met Jack after graduation, he was the first person I told about my family dynamics. He was outraged on my behalf, but also helped me see that their opinions didn't define me. With his support, I started building boundaries with my family, though I never fully confronted the years of dismissal and favoritism. Until my wedding day, when Allison's public declaration, the family fraud in white, brought every painful memory rushing back. After the reception, Jack and I retreated to our hotel suite. The luxurious room with its rose petals scattered across the king-sized bed and chilled champagne seemed to mock what should have been our perfect wedding night. I'm so sorry, Jack said, loosening his tie, as I sat at the vanity removing the remaining pins from my hair. Do you want to talk about what happened? I caught his reflection in the mirror. His face showed such genuine concern that tears sprang to my eyes. She called me a fraud in front of everyone we know. I said, my voice barely above a whisper, and my mother's first instinct was to protect her, not me. On my wedding day, Jack came to stand behind me, placing his hands gently on my shoulders. Your sister was completely out of line, and honestly, I'm having a hard time understanding your parents' reaction. They should have shut that down immediately. I nodded, reaching up to squeeze one of his hands. That's just how it's always been. Allison first, me second. Or not at all. You know that's not right, don't you? Jack's voice was gentle but firm. You deserve better from your family. I turned to face him, suddenly feeling exhausted. I know. I've always known, I guess. I just kept hoping things would change. Jack sat on the edge of the bed. What do you think triggered Allison tonight? Was it just general jealousy? Or was there something specific? I sighed, finally slipping out of my champagne-stained wedding dress and hanging it carefully over a chair. I'm not sure, but I overheard someone say, Allison's been telling people I'm not college material, that I don't deserve my success. That's ridiculous, Jack said. You worked incredibly hard for everything you've achieved. You're one of the most dedicated people I know. Thank you. I smiled weakly, pulling on my silk pajamas. But for Allison, it's always been about natural talent. The fact that I had to work for my success somehow makes it less valid in her eyes. And my parents seem to agree. I paused, a thought suddenly occurring to me. I wonder if it has something to do with money. Allison's been struggling at state and tuition is due soon for her final semester. The shared account, Jack asked, referencing the joint bank account my parents had set up years ago. I nodded, reaching for my laptop. I haven't checked it in a while. I've been using my own savings for everything since sophomore year. Logging into the online banking portal, I entered the account information. As the balance loaded, my jaw dropped. Jack, look at this. I turned the screen toward him. The account should have over $20,000 in it. My parents deposit $500 every month and I haven't touched it in years. But there's only $2,200 left. Jack frowned, scanning the transaction history with me. Nordstrom, Sephora, Southwest Airlines. These don't look like educational expenses. I scrolled back further, a sinking feeling in my stomach. She's been using it as her personal shopping account. Look, $3,000 for a spring break trip to Cancun last year. $1,200 for a shopping spree at the Mall of America. Could your parents not know? Jack asked, though his tone suggested he doubted it. They have online access too. I clicked through to another screen. And look, there are transfers directly from my mom to Allison's personal account separate from this one. Thousands of dollars over the past few years. Money that was supposed to be for both of you. I nodded, feeling a strange sense of calm settling over me. All this time I've been working multiple jobs to pay for school and living expenses, while Allison's been using the family fund for shopping and vacations. And my parents have been giving her extra on the side. Jack's expression hardened. That's not just favoritism, General. That's financial abuse. The word abuse hit me like a physical blow. I'd never thought of it that way, but he was right. My parents had systematically diverted resources meant for both of us to favor Allison. All while I worked myself to exhaustion to avoid asking them for help. What do you want to do? Jack asked, after a moment of heavy silence. I stared at the screen at the long list of frivolous purchases made with money meant for education. Money that represented my parents' supposed commitment to supporting both their daughters equally. I'm going to freeze the account, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. Are you sure that's going to cause drama? I turned to look at him, feeling more certain than I had in years. I'm sure. The account was set up for education expenses. If Allison needs money for tuition, she can explain to our parents why the account is empty. I'm done covering for her. Jack nodded, kissing the top of my head. I support whatever you decide. Just know this might get messy. It's already messy, I replied. At least now it will be honest. After Jack fell asleep, I called the bank's 24-hour service line. The representative was helpful once I verified my identity as an account holder. I'd like to place a freeze on account number 875329940, I said quietly, stepping into the bathroom so I wouldn't wake Jack. May I ask the reason for the freeze, Miss Collins? The representative asked. I believe the account is being used fraudulently, I replied, the irony of the word. Fraud, not lost on me. I need to prevent any further withdrawals until the matter is resolved. I understand. The freeze will take effect immediately. No withdrawals or transfers will be possible until the freeze is lifted. Thank you, I said, feeling a strange mixture of relief and apprehension. As I hung up, I noticed a notification on my phone, an email from my mother, sent just an hour earlier. With trembling fingers, I opened it. Genevieve, it read. I hope you've calmed down about what happened at the reception. You know how Allison gets when she feels left out. We need to transfer money from the family account tomorrow for Allison's tuition payment. It's the final deadline. Please don't make this difficult because of one little incident. Mom. One little incident. That's how she characterized my sister publicly humiliating me on my wedding day. And the casual assumption that I would just go along with their plans to use the shared money for Allison despite everything that had happened made something snap inside me. For the first time, I saw my family dynamics with complete clarity. This wasn't just about Allison's jealousy or my parents' favoritism. This was about a systematic pattern of emotional and financial manipulation that had shaped my entire life. I closed the email without responding and crawled back into bed beside Jack. Tomorrow would bring consequences, I knew, but for tonight, I had finally taken a stand. The incessant ringing of my phone woke me at 7:30 the next morning. I fumbled for it on the nightstand, squinting at the screen. 10 missed calls from my mother, 3 from my father, and several texts, all with increasing urgency. "What's going on?" Jack mumbled, rolling over to face me. "It's starting," I said, showing him the screen as another call from my mother came in. Taking a deep breath, I answered, "Hello, Genevieve." My mother's voice was shrill with panic. "What have you done? We need to access the account right now. Allison's tuition payment is due by 9 this morning." I sat up, switching the call to speaker so Jack could hear. "Good morning to you too, Mom. I'm doing fine after yesterday, thanks for asking." "This isn't the time for sarcasm," she snapped. "The account is frozen. We need that money today. Allison will lose her place at the university if we don't pay." "The account was established for educational expenses," I said calmly. "But that's not how it's been used, is it?" There was a pause on the other end. "What are you talking about?" I looked at the transaction history, Mom. Nordstrom Sephora flights to Cancun. Unless Allison is studying fashion merchandising in Mexico, those aren't educational expenses. Sometimes she needs other things, my mother said defensively. "College isn't just about tuition. And what about the transfers to her personal account? The ones you've been making for years?" Another longer pause. "You had no right to go snooping through our private transactions." "It's my account too," I reminded her. "My name is on it. The money was supposed to be for both of us." "Well, you've always been so independent," she said, her tone shifting to the guilt-inducing one I knew well. "Always insisting on doing things your way, working those jobs instead of focusing on your studies." Allison needed the support more. Jack shook his head in disbelief beside me. "I worked those jobs because I had to," I said. "Because the money that should have been helping me was going to Allison's shopping sprees." "That's not fair, Genevieve. You're being dramatic. Now please unfreeze the account. We need to make this payment today." I took a deep breath. "How much is the payment?" $4,600, she replied quickly. "The semester rate plus her housing deposit." I did a quick mental calculation. "The account only has $2,200 in it, Mom. Even if I unfroze it right now, you wouldn't have enough." Silence. "Then what? That can't be right. There should be much more. Look at the transaction history. Allison's been treating it like her personal spending account. The last withdrawal was 2 days before my wedding, $500 at Saks Fifth Avenue. Was that for textbooks?" I didn't know," my mother said, her voice smaller now. "She told me she needed it for school supplies. A $500 pen, maybe." I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. "This has been going on for years, Mom. You never questioned it because you didn't want to." Jack placed a supportive hand on my shoulder as my mother sputtered excuses on the other end of the line. "We'll figure something out," she finally said. "Your father and I can cover the difference. Just unfreeze the account, please." I closed my eyes, thinking of all the times I'd given and all the times I'd put Allison's needs before my own because that was what was expected in our family. "No," I said finally. "I'm not unfreezing it. That money was meant for education, and that's how it should be used. If Allison needs tuition money, she can get a job like I did. You can't be serious." My mother's voice rose again. "There's no time for that. The payment is due today. That's not my problem, I replied, surprised by my own firmness. Maybe she should have thought about that before spending the money on clothes and vacations. I can't believe you're being so selfish, my mother hissed. After everything we've done for you. What exactly have you done for me, Mom? Besides consistently prioritize Allison and undermine my achievements. That is not true. We've always supported both of you equally. I laughed, a short, harsh sound that surprised even me. The bank statements say otherwise. And so does Allison's little performance at my wedding. The family fraud. Remember, I know what you both really think of me. There was a telling silence on the other end. You've seen the texts, haven't you, my mother? Finally said, her voice much quieter. Yes. The pretender. That's what you call me behind my back. Because I had to work for what came naturally to Allison. Those were private conversations, she said weakly. We didn't mean... Don't, I interrupted. Don't tell me you didn't mean it. You both made your feelings perfectly clear. Now you'll have to figure out Allison's tuition, without my help. I hung up before she could respond, my hands shaking slightly. Jack pulled me into a hug. You okay? I nodded against his chest. I think so. It actually felt good to finally say all that. You were amazing, he said, kissing the top of my head. And completely right. My phone buzzed with a text. From my father this time. Your mother is very upset. Please call back. We need to discuss this rationally. I showed Jack the message. Rationally. As if I'm the irrational one for wanting accountability. What do you want to do? He asked. We're supposed to leave for our honeymoon this afternoon. I considered this. Part of me wanted to avoid the confrontation to head to the airport and deal with the fallout when we returned, but another part knew this was a turning point. If I backed down, now nothing would change. I think I need to see this through, I said finally. We can always reschedule the first few days of the honeymoon. Jack nodded. Whatever you need. I'm with you all the way. At exactly 9:30, as we were finishing breakfast in our hotel room, my phone rang again. I expected it to be my mother, but instead, an unfamiliar number appeared on the screen. Hello? I answered cautiously. Is this Genevieve Collins? A professional-sounding woman asked. Yes, this is she. This is Barbara Reynolds from the University Financial Aid Office at Minnesota State. I'm calling because your sister Allison Collins listed you as an emergency contact for financial matters. We wanted to inform you that due to non-payment, her enrollment for the upcoming semester has been withdrawn as of this morning. I closed my eyes briefly. I understand. Thank you for letting me know. If the outstanding balance is paid within 5 business days, we may be able to reinstate her enrollment, though it's not guaranteed. After that, she would need to reapply for the following semester. I'll pass that information along, I said. As soon as I hung up, my phone immediately rang again. This time, it was my mother. They dropped her, she shouted without preamble. The university dropped Allison because of you. Because her tuition wasn't paid, I corrected calmly. Because she spent the money on other things. We don't have time for your petty revenge, Genevieve. She's your sister. Yes, she is. The same sister who called me a fraud in front of 200 people at my wedding. The same sister who's been mocking my achievements behind my back for years. She was upset. People say things they don't mean when they're upset. And the shopping sprees, the vacations. Were those because she was upset too? My mother made a frustrated noise. We can discuss all that later. Right now we need to fix this situation. Your father and I can come up with $2,000, but we need the rest from the account. Please, Genevieve. I thought about the years I'd spent working multiple jobs, the sacrifices I'd made, the times I'd gone without, so I wouldn't have to ask my parents for help, all while Allison was being handed everything. No, I said firmly. I'm not unfreezing the account. And honestly, Mom, maybe this is exactly what Allison needs. Some real consequences for once. You can't mean that, my mother gasped. This is her education, her future, which she clearly doesn't value very much, given how she's been spending the money meant for it. I'm coming to the hotel, my mother announced suddenly. We need to discuss this face to face. Before I could protest, she had hung up. I looked at Jack, who had heard the entire conversation. She's coming here. He nodded, squeezing my hand. You've got this. And I've got you. An hour later, there was a sharp knock at our hotel room door. Jack opened it to reveal my mother looking like she hadn't slept, still wearing the same clothes from the wedding. Where's Genevieve? She demanded, pushing past Jack into the room. I stood up from the small desk where I'd been sitting, steeling myself. I'm right here, Mom. She turned to me, eyes wild. You have to fix this. Now. Allison is devastated. Where is she? I asked, noticing my sister wasn't with her. In the car with your father. She's too upset to face you right now. I raised an eyebrow. That's convenient. This isn't a joke, Genevieve. Her entire future is at stake. And whose fault is that? I asked quietly. Who spent the money that was supposed to be for her education? My mother threw up her hands. She made some mistakes. She's young. She's 24, Mom. A year older than I am. And this isn't about one mistake. It's about years of irresponsibility that you and Dad have enabled. You never gave her everything she wanted. Never excused her behavior. Never treated her like she was special. And me like I was an afterthought. My mother's face flushed. That's not true. We've always been proud of you too. Have you? Because I have years of evidence suggesting otherwise. The pretender. Remember. She flinched at that. Those were private jokes. We didn't mean anything by them. They weren't jokes to me. I said, my voice breaking slightly despite my efforts to stay calm. Do you have any idea how it feels to know your family mocks your achievements behind your back? For the first time, I saw a flicker of genuine shame cross my mother's face. I found something else yesterday. I continued, pulling out my phone. When I was going through old photos, remember when I won the National Merit Scholarship, my senior year, the award ceremony? I pulled up a photo of my parents standing proudly with Allison at her middle school science fair, where she'd won 3rd place. You and Dad missed my ceremony for Allison's science fair. You said you couldn't get out of work. My mother looked away. We thought the science fair was more important for Allison's confidence. You were already doing so well. I needed your support too, I said softly. But I never got it. Not the way Allison did. My mother sank into a chair, suddenly looking much older. What do you want me to say, Genevieve? That we made mistakes? Fine, we made mistakes. But right now, Allison needs help. She needs consequences, I corrected. For once in her life, she needs to face the results of her actions. So what do you suggest? My mother's voice was bitter now. That she just drops out of college. Throws away years of education. I suggest she gets a job, saves money, and returns when she can pay for it herself. That's what responsible adults do. My mother stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. When did you get so cold? I laughed without humor. I'm not cold, Mom. I'm finally setting boundaries. There's a difference. Boundaries. She said the word like it was foreign. This isn't about boundaries. This is about family, helping family. Where was that sentiment when I was working 3 jobs to make ends meet? When I was skipping meals to afford textbooks? She had no answer for that. A knock at the door interrupted us. Jack opened it to reveal a university admissions packet that had been slid under the door. I picked it up confused, until I saw what it was, my academic awards and honors from Michigan, including a department recognition I'd received at graduation. Awards my parents had never seen because they'd attended Allison's final recital instead. What's that? My mother asked. I handed her the packet. Evidence that the pretender actually earned her success. I found these in the back of my closet at home last time I visited. Did you hide them? Or did Allison? My mother's face went pale as she flipped through the certificates and letters of recognition. I don't know what you're talking about. We never hid anything. Then why were they stuffed in a box behind my old winter clothes? Why didn't I ever receive them? She had no answer, just stared at the papers with a stricken expression. I think you should leave, I said quietly. Tell Allison that the account stays frozen. She can figure out her tuition like I figured out mine by working for it. My mother stood still, clutching the packet. This isn't over, Genevieve. You're right, I agreed. It's just beginning. I barely had time to process my conversation with my mother before another knock came at our hotel room door. This time when Jack opened it, my father stood there looking uncomfortable in the same suit he'd worn to the wedding. Can I come in? He asked, his voice quiet. Jack looked at me and I nodded. My father entered, followed by Allison, whose red-rimmed eyes suggested she'd been crying. Her makeup was smeared, and she looked nothing like the confident woman who had tossed champagne at me just hours earlier. We need to talk, my father said, standing awkwardly in the center of the room, while Allison slumped into an armchair without looking at me. As a family. Where's Mom? I asked, noticing her absence. In the car. She's upset. He cleared his throat uncomfortably. She showed me the academic awards. I had no idea they'd been misplaced. Misplaced, I repeated flatly. Is that what we're calling it? My father looked pained. Genevieve, we're here to resolve this situation. Your mother tells me you've frozen the family education account. Yes, I confirmed. After discovering it's been systematically drained for non-educational purposes. Allison finally looked up at me, a flash of the old defiance in her eyes. You had no right to do that. I had every right. My name is on the account, too. It was set up for both of us. You never used it, she shot back. You were always so proud of paying your own way. Because there was nothing left for me to use, I replied calmly. You made sure of that. Jack moved to stand beside me, a silent show of support that I appreciated more than he knew. Look, my father said, attempting to be the voice of reason, as he always did in family conflicts. What's done is done. The university has withdrawn Allison's enrollment, but they said if we pay within 5 days, they might reinstate her. And I prompted when he paused expectantly. And we need the money from the account, he finished. Plus whatever else we can scrape together. I shook my head. The account only has $2,200 in it. Even with that, you'd still be short. We know, my father said. Your mother and I can come up with another 1,000, and Allison's boyfriend can loan her 500. That's still not enough, I pointed out. Allison made a sound of frustration. This is ridiculous. It's my money too. Money for education, I reminded her. Show me the receipts for textbooks, tuition payments, academic supplies. Because all I saw were shopping sprees and vacation charges. I needed those things, she insisted. Designer handbags. Weekend trips to Chicago. $1,000 at the Cosmopolitan Hotel in Las Vegas. Those were educational necessities. My father looked genuinely shocked. Vegas. When were you in Vegas? Allison squirmed uncomfortably. It was just a weekend. For spring break. With what money, he demanded. I pulled out my laptop, opening the account history I'd saved. $4,000 withdrawn over 3 days in March, plus charges at high-end restaurants and clubs. My father took the laptop, scrolling through the transactions with growing disbelief. Allison, what is this? You told us you were staying with friends in Duluth for spring break. Everyone goes somewhere for spring break, she muttered defensively. Not on money meant for your education, he said, his expression hardening. He turned to me. Genevieve, I had no idea. I swear to you, we thought the money was being used for school. Mom knew, I said quietly. Look at the transfers from her personal account to Allison's. Thousands of dollars over the past few years. He took the laptop again, navigating to the page I'd mentioned. As he read, his face went pale. Margaret told me those were for school emergencies. Books she needed, unexpectedly lab fees. $400 to Sephora was a lab fee, I asked skeptically. My father looked stunned, then angry. He turned to Allison. Is this true? You've been lying to us about how you're spending the money. Allison's expression crumpled. I needed those things. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Pressure? I repeated incredulously. What pressure? You've been handed everything your entire life. Easy for you to say, she snapped. Perfect, Genevieve, who works so hard and makes everyone look bad. Do you have any idea what it's like living in your shadow? You were supposed to be the screw-up, not me. The room fell silent at her outburst. Even Allison looked shocked at what she'd just admitted. What did you just say? Jack asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Allison looked away. Nothing. Forget it. No, I said, stepping closer to her. Say it again. I was supposed to be the screw-up. She met my gaze, then years of resentment in her eyes. Yes, you were the one who struggled in school. You were the one who wasn't naturally gifted. It was always supposed to be me, who succeeded me, who made the family proud. Then, you had to go and ruin everything by working so damn hard. I stared at her, speechless. All these years I'd thought Allison resented me for not being good enough, for embarrassing her with my struggles. The truth was the opposite. She resented me for overcoming those struggles. Is that why you called me a fraud at my wedding? I asked softly. Because I worked for my success instead of having it handed to me. She looked away again. You don't understand. Everyone expected me to be the successful one. The pressure was killing me. I needed escapes, shopping sprees and vacations, I translated. Yes. And when Mom found out, she understood. She always understood. My father, who had been silent during this exchange, finally spoke. Your mother knew about all this. The trips, the shopping. Allison nodded reluctantly. She said I deserved nice things to compensate for all the pressure. He ran a hand over his face, looking suddenly exhausted. And the academic awards of Genevieve's, did you know about those too? A flash of guilt crossed Allison's face. Mom thought it would be better if they were put away. She said they'd just make me feel bad about my own grades. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. My own mother had deliberately hidden evidence of my achievements to protect Allison's feelings. And the texts I asked, calling me the pretender. Allison at least had the grace to look ashamed. That was how we were just blowing off steam by mocking me behind my back. For years, I fought to keep my voice steady. You weren't supposed to see those, she muttered. Clearly, I replied. Jack, who had been watching the exchange with growing anger, finally spoke up. Let me get this straight. You've been systematically stealing money meant for education, lying to your parents about it, mocking your sister behind her back, and then had the audacity to humiliate her at our wedding. And now you want her to bail you out. Put that way, even Allison seemed to recognize the absurdity of the situation. She slumped further into her chair. I think I said carefully that we need to establish some truths here. First, I earned every academic achievement I received through hard work rather than natural talent. Second, the money in that account was meant for education, not lifestyle expenses. And third, I am done enabling this family dynamic where Allison's needs always come before mine. My father nodded slowly. That's fair, Genevieve. Dad, Allison protested. What about my tuition? What about my future? What about it? He asked, and I was surprised by the new firmness in his voice. You've been lying to us, Allison, using money meant for your education on trips and shopping. Maybe it's time you face the consequences of those choices. Allison's mouth fell open in shock. Never in all our years growing up had my father taken my side over hers. I can't believe this, she said, tears filling her eyes again. You're all turning against me now. No one is turning against you, I said. We're simply asking you to take responsibility for your actions. Like you're so perfect, she spat. Miss Hardworker. Miss never made a mistake. I've made plenty of mistakes, I acknowledged. The difference is I've faced consequences for mine. So what am I supposed to do? She demanded. Just drop out of school. Ruin my life. You could get a job, I suggested. Save money. Return to school when you can afford it. A job, she repeated, as if I'd suggested something obscene. I don't have time for a job. I'm a student. Then you'll need to choose, my father said, surprising me again with his firmness. Because it seems to me you haven't been taking your studies very seriously anyway. What's that supposed to mean? Allison asked defensively. My father sighed. Your mother might have been keeping things from me, but I still see the grade reports, Allison. You're barely passing your classes. You've been on academic probation twice. I hadn't known that, but somehow I wasn't surprised. Allison had always relied on natural talent rather than effort. When challenges appeared, she looked for escapes rather than solutions. That's not fair, she protested. The professors at State are terrible. Everyone struggles. Not everyone, my father countered. Just those who don't put in the work. Allison looked from me to our father, clearly unused to being held accountable. This is all your fault, she said, glaring at me. You just had to make a big deal out of one little scene at your wedding. It wasn't, little Jack interjected. You humiliated my wife in front of everyone we know. You called her a fraud. And now we know why, because you're jealous that she succeeded through hard work, where you failed, despite your advantages. Jack, I said, quietly touching his arm. As much as I appreciated his defense, I didn't want this to escalate further. I'm sorry, he said, though he didn't sound sorry. But I'm tired of watching your family treat you this way. Allison stood suddenly. You know what? Fine. Keep your money. I don't need it. I don't need any of you. She stormed toward the door. Allison, wait, my father called. She paused, hand on the doorknob, looking back expectantly, clearly assuming he was about to give in as he always had before. Instead, he said, We'll talk more when you're calmer. But the account stays frozen. Genevieve is right that money was meant for education, not shopping sprees. Allison's face crumpled in disbelief. Without another word, she yanked the door open and left. My father turned to me, looking older and more tired than I'd ever seen him. I owe you an apology, Genevieve. A big one. I had no idea things had gotten this bad. You didn't want to know, I said, not unkindly. It was easier to believe everything was fine. He nodded sadly. Your mother. She's always favored Allison. I knew that, but I told myself it was natural that some parents connect more with one child than another. I didn't realize how unfair it had become. It's been unfair my entire life, Dad. I know that now, he said. And I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. Jack placed a supportive hand on my shoulder. What happens now? He asked. My father sighed. I honestly don't know. Your mother is struggling with all this. And Allison clearly needs a reality check. And our honeymoon? Jack asked. We're supposed to leave this afternoon. Go, my father said immediately. You should go. This is our mess to sort out, not yours. You've already given up your first night because of family drama. I hesitated, torn between wanting to escape and feeling I should stay to see this through. He's right, Jack said softly. We deserve our honeymoon. Your family needs to work this out themselves. Before I could respond, my father pulled out his phone. There's something else you should know, he said. Something I just found out this morning. He brought up what looked like a video and pressed play. It was the wedding reception filmed from someone's phone. I could see myself and Jack at the head table, then Allison approaching with her champagne glass. The entire scene played out exactly as I remembered it, including my mother rushing forward with her. She didn't mean it excuse. Where did you get this? I asked. Jack's cousin sent it to me, my father replied. She thought I should see what really happened in case your mother tried to downplay it. He forwarded the video to both Jack and me. Just in case you need it. Evidence of what really happened. I stared at my father, seeing a strength I hadn't realized he possessed. Thank you, I said simply. He nodded. Go on your honeymoon. Enjoy your time with your husband. When you get back, we'll figure things out. As he left, I turned to Jack. Should we really go? He pulled me into his arms. Yes. You've said what needed to be said. You've stood up for yourself. Now let's go celebrate our marriage away from all this drama. Looking up at his kind, steady face, I found myself nodding. Okay, let's go. But even as we packed our bags for Hawaii, I knew that nothing would be the same when we returned. We cut our honeymoon short by 3 days, When my father called to tell me, my mother had been hospitalized for what they initially thought was a heart attack, but turned out to be severe anxiety. "She's asking for you," he said, his voice tired and strained. "I know it's a lot to ask, but could you come home?" Jack and I were on the first flight back to Minnesota. Despite everything, they were still my family. And for better or worse, I needed to see this through. We went straight from the airport to the hospital where my father waited in the hallway outside my mother's room. "How is she?" I asked, setting down my carry-on. "Physically, she's fine," he said. "The doctors say it was a panic attack that mimicked cardiac symptoms. They're keeping her overnight for observation, but she'll be released tomorrow." "And emotionally?" Jack asked. My father sighed. "Not good. The university officially dropped Allison from all her classes. She's been staying with a friend, refusing to talk to either of us. Your mother, she's taking it hard. Has she admitted her role in all this?" I asked. "Partially," he replied. "She acknowledges giving Allison extra money, but claims she didn't know about the Vegas trips or the extent of the shopping. I'm not sure I believe her completely, but..." He trailed off looking torn. "But she's your wife," I finished for him. "I understand. She wants to talk to you," he said. "Alone." I looked at Jack, who squeezed my hand reassuringly. "I'll be right out here if you need me," he said. Taking a deep breath, I entered the hospital room. My mother looked small against the white sheets, her face pale and drawn. A heart monitor beeped steadily beside her. "Genevieve," she said, her voice weaker than I'd ever heard it. "You came." "Of course I came," I replied, taking a seat beside the bed. "You're my mother." She reached for my hand, and after a moment's hesitation, I let her take it. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, "for everything." I waited, not making it easier for her. She needed to say it all. "I did hide your awards," she continued after a moment. "And I did transfer extra money to Allison. I told myself it was because she needed more help than you did. That you were so independent, so capable." She closed her eyes briefly. "But the truth is, I was wrong. I favored her, and I hurt you. Deeply." The admission stunned me. I had never expected my mother to acknowledge the truth so plainly. "Why?" I asked the question that had haunted me for years. Why was it always Allison first, me second? She was quiet for so long I thought she might not answer. "She reminded me of myself," she finally said. "The natural talent, the ease with which things came to her. I was like that too once. Before I gave it all up to get married, have children. And I reminded you of..." "No one," she admitted. "You were your own person. Working so hard, so determined. I didn't understand you, Genevieve. And instead of trying, I focused on the child who reflected me." The honesty was painful, but strangely healing. For the first time, I felt like my mother was seeing me, really seeing me. "I read all your awards and honors," she continued. "While I was lying here thinking I might be dying. You achieved so much, and I barely acknowledged it, because it made me face my own failures." "Your failures?" She nodded weakly. "I didn't work for what I wanted. I took the easy path. When things got hard, I gave up. Just like Allison does. But you never gave up. You just worked harder. Like your father." I hadn't considered that before, that I might take after my father in that way. It made a certain sense. "What happens now?" I asked. "I don't know," she admitted. "Allison isn't speaking to any of us. Your father is." She paused. "He's very angry with me, and rightfully so." "And us?" I asked, gesturing between us. "Where do we go from here?" She squeezed my hand. "I want to try, Genevieve. To be better. To see you clearly. It won't happen overnight. I have years of patterns to break, but I want to try if you'll let me." I thought about it, about all the years of hurt and disappointment. I think I said slowly that I'd like that too. But there need to be boundaries. Real ones this time. She nodded. "Of course. And Allison needs help," I continued. "Real help, not enablement." "I know," she agreed. "I see that now." A knock at the door interrupted us. A nurse entered, followed by my father and Jack. "Visiting hours are ending soon," the nurse informed us. As I stood to leave, my mother held onto my hand. Will you come back tomorrow, when they release me? I nodded. Yes. We'll talk more then. In the hallway, Jack pulled me into a hug. How did it go? Surprisingly well, I said. I think she might actually be ready to change. My father looked hopeful but skeptical. I want to believe that. Time will tell, I acknowledged. But it's a start. We were about to leave when the hospital elevator doors opened, and Allison stepped out. She froze when she saw us, clearly not expecting a family gathering. What are you all doing here? She asked, her voice hostile, but with an underlying note of uncertainty. Mom had a panic attack, my father explained. They're keeping her overnight. Allison's face paled. Is she okay? She will be, he assured her. Physically, at least. Allison shifted uncomfortably. I just came to drop off her medication. I didn't know everyone would be here. We cut our honeymoon short, Jack explained, his tone neutral but cool. Oh. She looked at the floor, then back up at me. Can we talk? Just for a minute. I glanced at Jack, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Sure, I said. Let's go to the waiting room. The small room was empty, except for us. Allison sat on the edge of a plastic chair, looking nothing like her usually confident self. I lost my apartment, she said abruptly. Without being enrolled, I can't stay in campus housing, and I can't afford the security deposit on a new place. I'm sorry to hear that, I said carefully. Yeah, well, she shrugged, trying for nonchalance but not quite achieving it. Turns out life gets pretty complicated when your safety nets disappear. Where are you staying? With Jenna. You remember her. From high school. But her boyfriend's moving in next week, so I need to find somewhere else. I waited, sensing there was more. I got a job, she finally said, not meeting my eyes. At Starbucks. It's not much, but it's something. That's good, I said, genuinely impressed that she'd taken that step. How is it? Hard, she admitted. I never realized how exhausting it is to be on your feet all day, and people can be really rude. I nodded. My first job was at a coffee shop too, junior year of high school. She looked surprised. I didn't know that. There's a lot you don't know about me, Allison. Just like there's a lot I don't know about you. She was quiet for a moment. I was jealous, she finally said. Of you. Your whole life. I couldn't hide my shock. Of me. Why? Because everything came so easily to me when we were kids. School friends, sports. I never had to try. Everyone just expected me to be great. She picked at a loose thread on her sleeve. But then we grew up, and suddenly being naturally smart wasn't enough. You figured that out way before I did. You learned how to work hard, how to push through challenges. I never did. It was the most honest conversation we'd ever had. It's not too late to learn, I offered. She looked up at me, vulnerability in her eyes. Do you think I can change, I mean? I think anyone can change if they want to badly enough. I'm sorry, she said suddenly. For what I did at your wedding. It was unforgivable. Why did you do it? I asked the question that had been haunting me. She looked away. I was drunk, and angry, and scared. Scared of what? Of losing my place, she admitted. You were getting married to this amazing guy, starting this perfect life. Meanwhile, I was failing school, spending money I didn't have, trying to pretend everything was fine. When I saw you in that wedding dress looking so happy and successful, something just snapped. I could understand that feeling, even if I couldn't excuse what she'd done. Thank you for apologizing, I said. Does that mean you forgive me? She asked, hope in her voice. Not yet, I said honestly. But maybe someday, if things really change. She nodded, accepting this. That's fair. What will you do now? About school? I don't know, she admitted. I can't afford to go back right now. Maybe community college eventually once I save some money. I thought about that, about Allison finally facing the real world, without the cushion of parental favoritism. It might be the best thing that could happen to her. Whatever you decide, I said, make sure you're doing it for yourself, not because it's what mom and dad expect. She looked thoughtful at that. I've never really asked myself what I want. Not really. Maybe it's time to start. We sat in silence for a moment, the years of rivalry and resentment still present, but somehow less powerful than before. I should go give Mom her medication, she finally said, standing. As she reached the door, I called after her. Allison. She turned. Yeah, I'm proud of you. For getting the job. A small, genuine smile, perhaps the first real one I'd seen from her in years. Thanks. That means a lot. After she left, I sat alone for a few minutes processing everything. When I finally returned to Jack, and my father Jack immediately pulled me aside. You won't believe this, he said, showing me his phone. It's been recording this whole time. The entire conversation with Allison. I stared at the screen. You recorded it. He looked sheepish. Not intentionally. I started recording at the hospital entrance because I wanted to remember which floor your mom was on. I never stopped it. It picked up everything. Everything I echoed. He nodded. Her admission that she was jealous. The apology. All of it. I wasn't sure how I felt about having tangible evidence of what might have been a turning point in my relationship with my sister. On one hand, it felt like a violation of a private moment. On the other, given our family's history of rewriting events, having a record of what was actually said might be valuable. Save it, I finally decided, just in case. But let's hope we never need it. As we left the hospital, my father pulled me aside. I want you to know I'm going to do better too. For too long, I took the path of least resistance. I let your mother's favoritism continue, because it was easier than confronting it. That wasn't fair to you. Thank you, Dad, I said, genuinely touched. Your sister has a long road ahead of her, he continued. And so do your mother and I. But I think today might be a new beginning for all of us. As Jack and I drove back to our hotel, I felt lighter than I had in years. Not because everything was resolved, it wasn't. Not by a long shot. But for the first time, the truth was out in the open. No more pretending, no more family fraud, just imperfect people trying to do better. Are you okay? Jack asked, reaching across the console to take my hand. I think I am, I replied, surprising myself with how true it felt. For the first time in a long time, I really think I am. 6 months after the wedding that changed everything, Jack and I settled into our new home in Madison, Wisconsin. He had accepted a promotion that required relocation, and I had found a position at a marketing firm that valued my skills and work ethic. The physical distance from Minnesota had proven healthy, close enough to visit, when we wanted far enough to maintain the boundaries I'd established. Our little craftsman house with its wraparound porch and maple trees was everything I'd dreamed of but never quite believed I deserved. Unpacking the last of our boxes on a crisp October afternoon, I came across a frame Jack had given me for our 3-month anniversary. Inside was my college diploma, alongside a note in his handwriting. Never a fraud, always extraordinary. Find a place for that yet? He asked, entering with 2 mugs of hot apple cider. I smiled, taking the offered mug. I'm thinking the office, where I can see it while I work. Perfect, he agreed, kissing the top of my head. The months since the wedding had brought significant changes for everyone. My mother, true to her word, had started therapy to address her favoritism and the damage it had caused. Our relationship was still fragile, rebuilt through weekly phone calls and carefully navigated visits, but it was more honest than it had ever been. My father had surprised everyone by taking early retirement from his accounting firm and starting a small financial literacy program for young adults. If Allison had understood money management earlier, things might have been different, he told me when he announced his plans. I couldn't help but feel proud of him for finding purpose in our family's painful experience. And Allison had perhaps changed the most. After 3 months at Starbucks, she'd moved to a receptionist position at a local dental office. She was sharing an apartment with 2 roommates and had enrolled in 2 night classes at the community college. I'm thinking about dental hygiene, she'd told me during our last phone call. It's practical, pays well, and only takes 2 years of school. Plus, I'm already learning about the field from the dentists at work. It wasn't the prestigious career our parents had once envisioned for her, but it was a path she had chosen for herself. That made all the difference. The shared bank account remained frozen by mutual agreement. Instead, I had helped Allison set up a separate education fund in her name, only with clear withdrawal restrictions. I made a one-time contribution to get it started, with the understanding that she would be responsible for maintaining it going forward. "Why are you helping me at all?" she had asked when I proposed the arrangement. "After everything I did." "Because you're my sister," I answered simply, "and because everyone deserves a second chance, just not an unlimited number of them." The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. Jack went to answer it while I placed the framed diploma on my office desk. "Special delivery," he called. "Looks like your sister kept her promise." I hurried to the entryway where Jack was signing for a package. Allison had mentioned sending something but refused to tell me what it was. The box was lighter than I expected. I carried it to the kitchen table and carefully opened it. Inside, nested in tissue paper, was a handcrafted photo album. The cover read, "Genevieve's Achievements, Better Late Than Never." With trembling fingers, I opened it. Inside were all my academic awards certificates, and honors, the ones that had been misplaced for so many years, carefully preserved and arranged chronologically. But there was more. Between the official documents were photos I'd never seen before, me giving a speech at a high school academic awards ceremony, receiving my scholarship certificate, standing proudly in my graduation robes. Where did she get these, I wondered aloud. "There's a note." Jack pointed to an envelope tucked into the back cover. I opened it and began reading. "Genevieve, I found these photos in Dad's old files. He took them even when Mom and I didn't show up for your events. He always believed in you, even when he didn't know how to show it. I wish I could go back and be there for all these moments. Since I can't, I wanted you to have proof that they happened and that they mattered. I'm working on myself. It's hard and uncomfortable, and some days I hate it, but I'm doing it because you showed me that hard work is what makes accomplishments meaningful. You were never the fraud. If anyone was, it was me. Thank you for not giving up on me completely. I don't deserve a sister like you, but I'm trying to become someone who might. With love and regret, Allison." I sat back, blinking back tears. "Wow," was all I could manage. Jack, who had read over my shoulder, squeezed my hand. "That's quite a peace offering." "It is," I agreed, "and not at all what I expected from her. People can surprise you," he said, "when they're finally ready to change." 2 weeks later, we hosted our first dinner party in our new home. Jack's colleague Thomas and his wife Sarah came along with my new friend Rachel from work and her husband Miguel. It was a small gathering but significant. These were people who knew me only as I was now, not as the less talented sister or the family fraud. As we sat around our dining table sharing stories and laughing, I felt a sense of peace I'd never experienced growing up. These people were becoming our chosen family relationships, based on mutual respect rather than obligation or history. My phone buzzed with a text from Allison. "Got an A on my anatomy midterm, first A since high school. Turns out studying actually works. Who knew?" I smiled, showing the message to Jack. "Progress," he commented. "Definitely," I agreed, texting back a quick congratulations. Later, as our guests were preparing to leave, Rachel pulled me aside. "This was wonderful, General. You and Jack seem so happy here." "We are," I told her. "It feels like a fresh start." "Sometimes, that's exactly what you need," she said. "My mom always says that when one door closes, another opens." I finished with a smile. But my grandmother had a different saying. She used to tell me, "Sometimes you have to close the door yourself, and it's okay to lock it if needed." Rachel laughed. "I like that better. More empowering." After everyone had gone, and Jack was loading the dishwasher, I stepped out onto our front porch. The night was clear, stars visible, despite the city lights. I thought about how far I'd come from the insecure girl, desperate for family approval, to the woman who had finally learned to approve of herself. The journey hadn't been easy. Standing up to years of family dynamics had been terrifying. Freezing that bank account had felt like jumping off a cliff. But sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the most necessary growth. I thought about all the women who might be standing where I once stood, afraid to set boundaries, afraid to demand respect, afraid to acknowledge their own worth. If I could tell them one thing, it would be this: your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth. And sometimes the family you choose can heal the wounds left by the family you were born into. Jack joined me on the porch, wrapping a blanket around both our shoulders. Penny, for your thoughts. I was just thinking about how much has changed, I said, leaning into him. A year ago, I was still trying to please everyone, still hoping my family would eventually see me clearly. And now I know that I don't need their validation to know my own worth. And ironically, once I stopped seeking their approval, that's when things started to change. He nodded thoughtfully. You know what the best part is? You didn't just stand up for yourself. You actually helped everyone else grow too. Your parents are addressing their issues. Allison's finally taking responsibility for her life. You broke a cycle. We broke it, I corrected him. I couldn't have done it without you believing in me. As we stood there under the stars, I realized that the greatest lesson in all of this wasn't about family betrayal or even standing up for myself. It was about authenticity. For years, everyone in my family had been playing roles: the golden child, the disappointed parents, the overlooked daughter. It wasn't until those roles were shattered that we could begin to see each other as real, flawed, complex human beings. Sometimes it takes a moment of public humiliation, a drink tossed at a wedding dress, a cruel toast meant to wound to break through years of pretense. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling them and let them face consequences. And sometimes standing in your truth is the greatest gift you can give, not just to yourself, but to everyone around you. I don't know what the future holds for my relationship with Allison or my parents. Healing takes time, and trust once broken isn't easily repaired. But I do know this: whatever happens, I'll face it as my authentic self. No more pretending, no more family fraud. Just me, imperfect, hardworking, and finally completely free. What about you? Have you ever had to stand up to family expectations or set difficult boundaries with loved ones? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share to help others who might be facing similar challenges. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, your worth is never determined by someone else's perception. Take care until next time.